I never thought my world would crumble in the dead of night, in our own garage. The scene before me was like a twisted nightmare. There, entangled in the backseat of our family car, were Ethan and Grace, my husband and sister. The pain of betrayal struck me like a physical blow, leaving me gasping for air. My name is Ava Carter, a 28-year-old nurse, married to the man I thought was the love of my life. Ethan was my high school classmate, someone I barely knew back then, but when he re-entered my life years later, he came as a whirlwind romance that I naively believed was fate. Our love is real, Ava, Ethan's words echoed in my mind, now a cruel joke in the face of his betrayal. Our love story began innocently enough. Ethan approached me after graduation, his charm and attentiveness sweeping me off my feet. He was the popular guy in school, the kind that every girl dreamed of. But me? I was just Ava, the quiet one. His interest in me was baffling, yet intoxicating. Why me? I had asked him once, my insecurities surfacing. Because I fell in love, he replied, his gaze holding mine, convincing and sincere. Or so I thought. The doubt I carried was partly due to my sister, Grace. Beautiful, outgoing, and the polar opposite of me. She was the one who always shone, effortlessly attracting attention. When I turned to her for advice about Ethan, her words were encouraging, yet somehow patronizing. He's serious about you. Who would chase a girl for months for a fling? She had said, her words tinted with a hint of condescension. I wanted to believe her, to believe that someone could truly love me for me. Ethan's kindness in our first year together only solidified my trust. He was the perfect boyfriend, showering me with attention and surprises. Every anniversary, every birthday was a celebration of our love. But after we got married, everything changed. Can't you at least help with the cleaning? It's your house, too, I pleaded with Ethan on countless occasions. He earned less than me, spending most of his time idly while I worked exhausting shifts at the hospital. But he shrugged off my requests, his once sweet words turning into sharp retorts. You're the one who's good at it, he'd say, his voice laced with annoyance. The emotional toll was immense. My once fairy tale romance had turned into a draining, one-sided relationship. Ethan's transformation from a loving partner to a freeloader was gradual but relentless. The worst part? I started believing that maybe it was my fault, that maybe I wasn't enough. That night, the night I caught them, was supposed to be like any other. I woke up to find Ethan's side of the bed cold and empty. A sense of unease led me to the garage, where I heard them before I saw them. The sight of Ethan and Grace together shattered any illusions I had left. Be gentle, Ethan, Grace's voice was a whisper, but to me it was a scream that tore through my heart. I stood there, frozen, as the truth revealed itself in the most horrifying way. They didn't see me. They were too lost in their own world of deceit. I closed the garage quietly, locking them in their den of betrayal. Rushing to my parents' house, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. My parents and Mark, Grace's unsuspecting husband, were waiting, their expressions grim. Mark held a recording device in his hand, and the voices of Ethan and Grace filled the room, discussing their affair with a casual cruelty that made my skin crawl. I knew then what I had to do. Revenge was the only path left for me. I wanted them to feel the pain they inflicted, to understand the depth of their betrayal, and I was ready to do whatever it took to make that happen. Let's make them pay, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, and so the plan for retribution began. As the sun peeked through the curtains the next morning, my resolve hardened. The man I had loved, Ethan, was nothing but a mask, and Grace, my sister, a serpent in disguise. I replayed their secret conversations, each word a dagger to my heart. You're just too good at this, Ethan. Grace's voice from the recording mocked me. Ethan's laughter followed. Only for you, Grace. The memories of our relationship, once sweet, now turned bitter. Ethan and I had started as friends, and his pursuit seemed so genuine. He was the popular one, the golden boy, while I remained in the background, unnoticed. His sudden interest in me was like a dream come true. I was flattered, overwhelmed, and eventually in love. Why me? I had asked him more than once. Because you're different, Ava. You're real, Ethan had said, looking into my eyes with such intensity that I believed him. That belief was my downfall. But Grace, she was the epitome of confidence and allure. She had always been the center of attention, effortlessly stealing the spotlight. When Ethan came into my life, Her advice was laced with subtle jabs, undermining my self-esteem while pretending to be supportive. "Take a chance, Ava. Ethan seems different," she urged, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I remembered how Ethan's behavior started changing after our marriage. The sweet gestures and thoughtful surprises became rarer, replaced by indifference and neglect. I was left to manage everything, from household chores to finances, while Ethan lounged around, his job at his father's company more of a time pass than a career. "We need to support each other, Ethan. Can't you see I'm struggling?" I had pleaded with him countless times. "You knew I wasn't the domestic type," was his cold reply. My efforts to involve him in our life were met with resistance and anger. His once loving words turned into harsh criticisms, his hands, once gentle, now raised in threat. I remembered the fear, the sense of walking on eggshells around my own husband. "You're better off doing it yourself. You don't want me to mess it up, do you?" Ethan's words were a constant reminder of my supposed inadequacy. The realization that it was all a charade to get close to Grace hit me like a tidal wave. Their affair wasn't just a fleeting moment of weakness. It was planned, nurtured in deceit. They used my love, my trust, as a stepping stone for their sordid affair. Grace's words from the recording played in my mind. "I've always admired how easily you manipulate, Ethan." His response was a chilling confession. "And I admire your ability to play the innocent sister." The plan for revenge took shape in my mind, clear and precise. I couldn't let them get away with their treachery. They needed to understand the pain they had caused, the lives they had shattered. It was time for their facade of love to come crashing down. "I will make them regret every lie, every deceit," I whispered to myself, a vow that I intended to keep. The morning light did nothing to ease the storm inside me. As I sat with Mark, my parents, and the recording, a plan began to take shape. It was more than just a need for revenge. It was a quest for justice, for exposing the lies that Ethan and Grace had woven so skillfully. "Did you know about this, Mark?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I had my suspicions," Mark confessed, his eyes dark with pain, "but I never imagined the depth of their betrayal." My parents, always supportive, looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "We're here for you, Ava, whatever you need," my father said, his voice firm. It was a surreal moment, hearing the supportive words of my family while grappling with the betrayal of those I had loved. Ethan's true nature was a bitter pill to swallow. He was no longer the man I married, but a stranger with a charming facade. "Our anniversary, it was all a lie, wasn't it?" The words tumbled out of me, a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "He never cared about the marriage, Ava. It was all a game to him." Mark's voice was heavy with unspoken emotions. The conversation shifted to the specifics of our revenge. It had to be meticulous, leaving no room for Ethan and Grace to escape the consequences of their actions. "We need to hit them where it hurts the most," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Financially and socially," Mark added, his mind already strategizing. The plan was simple yet effective. We would use the evidence of the affair to ruin their reputation. Ethan's job at his father's company would be the first target. With the recording and my testimony, it would be easy to convince his father of Ethan's true character. "Grace won't get away with this either," I said, a cold determination settling over me. Mark nodded. "I'll file for divorce and make sure she doesn't get a penny." The thought of confronting them was both terrifying and exhilarating. I wanted to see the shock on their faces when they realized their world was crumbling. I wanted them to feel a fraction of the pain they had caused me. "Let's do it. Let's bring them down," I declared, my voice filled with a newfound strength. My parents agreed, their support unwavering. "We'll stand by you, Ava, always," my mother said, her eyes glistening with tears. The meeting ended with a plan in place. It was time for Ethan and Grace to face the consequences of their actions. They thought they could use me and get away with it. They were wrong. I would make sure of that. The day unfolded with a tense anticipation. I waited for the moment when Ethan and Grace would realize their carefully constructed world of lies was about to collapse. My heart raced with a mix of fear and vindictive satisfaction. In the late afternoon, the confrontation took place. Ethan and Grace, looking disheveled and confused after being released from the garage, were summoned to my parents' house. They walked in, not knowing that their lives were about to change irrevocably. "What the hell, Ava? Why did you lock us in there?" Ethan's voice was filled with anger and confusion. Grace added, her voice dripping with feigned innocence, "Ava, we were worried sick about you. Why did you run off like that?" Their acting was almost convincing, but I knew better. "You're worried about me? That's rich, coming from you two," I replied, my voice cold and unwavering. Mark stepped forward, his presence commanding. "We know about the affair. All of it." Ethan and Grace exchanged a panicked look, their masks of concern quickly dissolving. "You have no proof," Ethan blurted out, his voice betraying his fear. "That's where you're wrong," Mark said, pulling out the recording device. The voices of Ethan and Grace filled the room, their intimate conversation echoing off the walls. The color drained from their faces as they listened to their own words, their affair laid bare for all to hear. This is illegal. You can't record us like that." Grace stammered, her composure shattered. I stepped closer, my anger boiling over. "You think that matters now, after everything you've done? You used me, Ethan. You used our marriage to get to my sister. And you, Grace, how could you do this to me? To Mark?" My voice was a mixture of rage and heartache. Ethan's defiance crumbled, replaced by a desperate plea. "Ava, please, I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." "And you, Grace? What's your excuse?" I demanded, my gaze fixed on her. Grace's eyes darted around the room, seeking an ally, finding none. "It was a mistake, Ava. I never meant to hurt you." "A mistake? You call an ongoing affair a mistake?" My words were sharp, cutting through the room. Mark intervened, his voice calm but firm. "The marriage is over, Grace. I've already filed for divorce. And as for you, Ethan, your father will know about this. I doubt he'll want a son-in-law who cheats on his daughter with her own sister." Ethan's face went pale, the reality of his situation finally dawning on him. Grace began to sob, her tears failing to elicit sympathy from anyone in the room. "You two deserve each other," I said, the finality in my voice marking the end of the chapter that had been Ethan and Grace in my life. As they left, their pleas and cries echoing behind them, I felt a sense of closure. The path ahead would be challenging, but at least it would be free from their deceit. The revenge was just beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The aftermath of the confrontation left a bitter taste in my mouth. Ethan and Grace had left, their facades of innocence shattered. But it wasn't enough. The depth of their betrayal demanded more than just a revelation. It required retribution. Sitting around the dining table with Mark and my parents, we plotted our next moves. The air was thick with a sense of righteous anger, a collective desire to see justice served. "We need to ensure they truly understand the consequences of their actions," Mark said, his voice resolute. I nodded in agreement. "They can't just walk away from this unscathed." My father, usually a man of few words, spoke up. "Ethan's employment at his father's company is his lifeline. If he loses that, he loses everything." A plan began to form, one that involved not just exposing Ethan's infidelity to his family, but also highlighting his manipulative nature. His father, a respected businessman, would not tolerate such a scandal. "And what about Grace?" my mother asked, her voice tinged with disappointment and disgust for her own daughter. "Her social standing, her lifestyle, it all hinges on her marriage to Mark," I said. "Once the divorce is finalized and the details of her infidelity become public, she'll lose it all." Mark nodded. "I'll make sure the divorce settlement leaves her with nothing. She won't be able to charm her way out of this." The conversation turned to the logistics of our plan. Mark had contacts who could expedite the divorce and ensure the affair was made public. My father knew people in the business community who would ensure Ethan's disgrace was well known. It was a meticulous plan, cold and calculated, but it was justified. Ethan and Grace had played with our lives, and now they would face the repercussions. "Are you sure about this, Ava?" my mother asked, concern in her eyes. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "They need to learn that actions have consequences. They can't just use people and expect to get away with it." As we finalized our plan, I felt a sense of empowerment. For too long, I had been the victim of their deceit, but now I was taking control. Ethan and Grace would soon learn the true cost of their betrayal, and I would be there to witness their fall. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as our plan was set into motion. Mark, with his connections, expedited the divorce proceedings and ensured that the details of Grace's infidelity became public knowledge. The reaction was immediate and scathing. Grace, once a social butterfly, found herself ostracized, her friends turning their backs on her in disgust. Meanwhile, my father used his influence to spread the word about Ethan's behavior. Soon enough, the scandal reached his father's ears. The disappointment and anger in his father's voice were palpable when he called Ethan for a meeting. "I cannot believe you would stoop so low, Ethan," his father had said, according to what I heard later. "You have not only shamed yourself, but our entire family." Ethan's pleas fell on deaf ears. His father, a man of principles, could not overlook such a grave transgression. Ethan was promptly removed from his position in the company, his future in tatters. As for Grace, the reality of her situation hit her hard. The luxurious life she had enjoyed was slipping through her fingers like sand. Her husband, whom she had deceived, was now her ex-husband, and he made sure she left the marriage with nothing but her personal belongings. The day of reckoning came when I encountered Ethan and Grace together, looking defeated and desperate. They had come, hoping for some form of forgiveness, a chance to explain themselves. "Ava, please, you have to understand," Ethan began, his voice trembling. "You don't get to ask for understanding, Ethan. Not after everything you've done." I cut him off, my voice cold and unyielding. Grace was next, her eyes brimming with tears. "Ava, I'm your sister. Please, can't we just talk about this?" "You ceased to be my sister the moment you betrayed me," I said, the finality in my voice leaving no room for argument. They tried to plead, to reason, but it was useless. The damage was done, their actions irredeemable. They had played a dangerous game and lost everything. "You both made your choices, and now you have to live with them," I said, turning away from their pleas. As I walked away, leaving them behind, I felt a sense of closure. The weight of their betrayal would no longer hold me down. They had received their due punishment, and I could finally move on. Ethan and Grace had thought they could manipulate those around them without consequence. But they were wrong. They learned the hard way that deceit and treachery come at a price they would now pay for the rest of their lives. In the weeks that followed, the dust began to settle. Ethan and Grace, now pariahs, faced the harsh reality of their choices. Their fall from grace was a tale whispered in hushed tones among our acquaintances, serving as a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal and deceit. Meanwhile, I found myself in a period of reflection. The intense emotions that had fueled my desire for revenge gave way to a quiet introspection. I had sought justice, and in many ways I had achieved it. Yet, the victory was bittersweet. There was no joy in seeing the downfall of people I once loved, only a profound sense of loss and a desire to move forward. I threw myself into work, finding solace in the routine and the sense of purpose it brought. My colleagues noticed the change in me, a newfound strength and resilience that had emerged from the ashes of my old life. One day, after a particularly grueling shift, I sat down with a close friend and coworker, Lisa, who had been a pillar of support through everything. "You look different, Ava. Stronger," she commented, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and admiration. "I had to be," I replied, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "I couldn't let them destroy me." Lisa nodded, understanding. "And now, what's next for Ava Carter?" I smiled, a genuine smile that had been absent for too long. "I start living for myself. I rebuild, but this time on my own terms." The path to healing wasn't straightforward. There were days when anger and sadness threatened to overwhelm me, but with each passing day they became less potent. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had lost in my marriage, my independence, my strength, and my capacity for joy. Months passed, and life found a new rhythm. Ethan and Grace became distant memories, occasional whispers in the wind that no longer had the power to hurt me. My relationship with my parents and Mark grew stronger, forged in the fires of adversity. We had faced a storm together, and it had brought us closer. As for love, I was cautious. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they were healing. I knew that someday I would be ready to open my heart again, but for now, I was content in finding peace within myself. Sitting in the park one sunny afternoon, watching the world go by, I realized that I had come a long way. The journey had been painful, filled with trials and tribulations, but it had led me to a place of understanding and acceptance. I had learned that revenge, while satisfying in the moment, was not a path to true happiness. True strength lay in forgiveness, in the ability to let go of the past and embrace the future. As I looked up at the clear blue sky, I felt a sense of hope, a belief that the best was yet to come. The past could not be changed, but the future was mine to write. And with that thought, I stood up, ready to face whatever life had in store for me, with a heart that was healing and a spirit that was unbroken. My name is Anna Mitchell, and I'm 38 years young. For the past 9 years, I've poured my heart into my skincare clinic, which has grown into a sanctuary of beauty and tranquility in the bustling heart of the city. My life, seemingly serene, was about to face an unexpected storm. It was a regular Thursday evening when Ethan, my husband of 4 years, casually dropped a bombshell over dinner. "I think it's time for Mom to move in with us," he said, as if discussing the weather. I paused, a forkful of salad suspended in midair. "Move in, as in permanently?" The words felt heavy in my mouth. Ethan nodded, oblivious to my shock. "Yeah, since Dad's gone, she's all alone. It's the least we can do." The news should have been a discussion, a decision made together. But there it was, presented as a done deal. My mind raced with images of Mrs. Harper, Ethan's mother, a woman of strong opinions and an even stronger presence, invading our peaceful home. But Ethan, our apartment isn't exactly spacious. Where would she even stay? I tried to keep my voice steady, but inside I was a whirlwind of anxiety and frustration. "We'll figure it out. It's important to me, Anna." His tone left no room for argument. I wanted to protest, to explain that this wasn't just about physical space, but about our space, our sanctuary. But I saw the resolve in Ethan's eyes, and something inside me deflated. "Okay," I sighed. "If it's just for a while, we can make it work." Ethan smiled, relieved, but I couldn't mirror his sentiment. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, a sense of foreboding creeping over me. The following week, Mrs. Harper arrived, not with a suitcase, but with a moving company. Boxes upon boxes cluttered our once serene living room, and my heart sank. This was not temporary. It was a complete upheaval. "What's all this, Mrs. Harper?" I asked, trying to mask my dismay with a polite smile. "Oh, darling, I sold the house. This place is much nicer, and I thought, why not?" she chirped, her voice too cheerful for the gravity of the situation. I turned to Ethan, searching for an explanation, but he just shrugged. "Mom needs to be comfortable," he said. That night, as I squeezed past the boxes to reach my own bed, I realized the invasion had just begun. My home, my sanctuary, was slipping away, and with it, a part of my soul screamed in protest. But little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The real storm was yet to come. The arrival of Mrs. Harper marked the beginning of a new, uninvited chapter in our lives. Her presence, once sporadic, became a permanent fixture, transforming our home into a space I hardly recognized. One evening, about a week after her arrival, I found Ethan and his mother in the midst of a lively conversation in the living room, now cluttered with Mrs. Harper's belongings. "Anna, come join us," Ethan beckoned, his tone unusually cheerful. As I approached, Mrs. Harper's eyes scanned me with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. "Anna, dear, I was just telling Ethan how cozy this place is. Much better than living alone in that big old house." "Ethan, we talked about this being temporary," I whispered, trying to keep my composure. He brushed off my concern with a wave of his hand. "Mom's happy here. Isn't that what matters?" The conversation turned to mundane matters, but I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This was not the agreement. This was not the life I had envisioned. In the following days, the situation worsened. Mrs. Harper, with her lavish tastes and disregard for boundaries, treated our home like her personal playground. The once orderly living room was now a maze of her possessions, and the tranquil ambiance I cherished was replaced by a constant buzz of her activities. "Ethan, we need to talk," I said one evening, finding him alone in the kitchen. "Your mother, she's taking over our home. We need to set some boundaries." He looked at me, his expression a mix of annoyance and indifference. "Anna, she's just trying to make herself at home. You're overreacting." "Overreacting? Overreacting? Ethan, look around. This isn't a home anymore. It's a storage unit for your mother's things." He shrugged, unmoved. "If you're so unhappy, maybe you should consider leaving." His words hit me like a physical blow. Leave? My own home? But as I looked around at the alien environment that my home had become, I realized he was right. This was no longer my sanctuary. It was time for me to reclaim my space, my peace. That night, with a heavy heart, I packed a suitcase with my essentials. I glanced around the apartment one last time, a silent farewell to a chapter of my life that was closing. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I was leaving behind a part of my life, but I was also stepping into a new beginning, one where I would not be overshadowed by the whims of others. I found refuge in a modest hotel room that night, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. Alone with my thoughts, I reflected on the path that led me here. My journey from a passionate beautician to a successful clinic owner was a testament to my resilience and ambition. But my personal life, it seemed, had taken a detour I hadn't anticipated. Ethan and I had met in a serendipitous encounter at a local cafe. He was charming, with a carefree spirit that complemented my meticulous nature. Our relationship blossomed into marriage, a union I believed was built on mutual respect and understanding. Yet, here I was, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The following days were a blur of emotions and decisions. I temporarily relocated my clinic to a smaller, more affordable space and dove into work. It was my sanctuary, a place where I felt in control, empowered. But the image of our cluttered apartment, now overrun by Mrs. Harper's possessions, lingered in my mind. Ethan's words echoed in my ears, "Maybe you should consider leaving." It wasn't just about the physical space. It was about respect, about being heard. I realized Ethan's perception of our life together had been a facade, masking his apathy and entitlement. Determined to confront the situation, I arranged to meet Ethan at a neutral location, a quaint coffee shop where we had shared many moments in the past. "Ethan, we need to talk about everything." "About us," I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup. "Anna, I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand that what happened wasn't just about your mother moving in. It's about us, about how you disregarded my feelings, and my presence in our home." Ethan sighed, a look of realization dawning on his face. "I didn't see it that way. I just thought—" "That's just it, Ethan. You didn't think about us, about me. You made a decision that affected both our lives without even considering how I would feel." The conversation was difficult, filled with moments of silence and unspoken truths, but it was necessary. By the end, it was clear that our paths had diverged. The love that once bound us had frayed under the weight of unmet expectations and unspoken grievances. As I walked away from the coffee shop, a sense of closure washed over me. It was time to turn the page, to start a new chapter in my life, one where I was the author of my own story. In the weeks that followed, I immersed myself in my work, finding solace in the familiar routines of my clinic. Each facial treatment I performed was not just a service to my clients, but a therapeutic ritual for my own healing. Yet, in the quiet moments, my thoughts drifted back to Ethan and the life we had shared. It was during one of these reflective moments that my phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen, a jolt to my newfound tranquility. I hesitated but answered. "Anna, we need to talk." Ethan's voice was tense, a stark contrast to his usual nonchalance. I agreed to meet him at our apartment, a place I hadn't returned to since the night I left. Stepping back into the apartment was like entering a time capsule, each room a reminder of the dreams and plans we had woven together. Ethan was waiting, his posture rigid, a nervous energy about him. "Anna, I've been thinking a lot since our last talk. I realize I've been inconsiderate." "Inconsiderate is an understatement, Ethan." My response was calm but firm. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I know, and I'm sorry, truly, but I want to make things right. Can we start over?" The offer hung in the air, heavy with the weight of our past. Part of me yearned for the comfort of what was familiar, of the love we once shared, but another part, stronger and more resolute, knew that some paths, once diverged, cannot be rejoined. "Ethan, I appreciate your apology, and I believe you're sincere, but too much has changed. I've changed. We can't just erase what happened and start over." He looked crestfallen, the reality of my words sinking in. "I guess I was hoping. But you're right. I just wish things could have been different." As I left the apartment for the last time, I felt a chapter closing behind me. It was a chapter filled with love, learning, and ultimately letting go. The pain of the past was still there, but it was now a part of the tapestry of my life, a tapestry I was weaving with new threads of strength and independence. As the days turned into weeks, my new reality began to take shape. I poured my energy into revitalizing my clinic, introducing new services and workshops that resonated with my own journey of self-care and empowerment. My clients, new and old, embraced these changes, and I found joy in their transformations, both skin deep and beyond. The clinic became more than just a business. It was a testament to my resilience, a place where I could channel my experiences into something beautiful and healing. My confidence grew, not just as a businesswoman, but as an individual forging her path. It was during this period of growth that Ethan re-entered my life, albeit in a way I hadn't anticipated. One evening, as I was closing the clinic, my phone buzzed with a message from him. Hesitant, I opened it to find a plea for help. "Anna, I'm in trouble. Can we talk?" The message was vague, but something in the tone suggested a seriousness I couldn't ignore. We agreed to meet at a local park the following day, a neutral ground amid the autumn leaves. Sitting on a park bench, Ethan looked different. The carefree demeanor was gone, replaced by a weariness that seemed to weigh on him. "Anna, I messed up," he began, his voice strained. "After you left, things with my mom got out of hand. I didn't realize how much we were spending, how much debt we were accumulating. I'm drowning." His words were a confession, an admission of the chaos he had found himself in. As he spoke, I felt a mix of emotions, surprise, sympathy, but above all, a reaffirmation of the decision I had made to leave. "Ethan, I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't help you. You need to take responsibility for your actions and find a way to deal with this." He nodded, a resigned acceptance in his eyes. "I know, I guess I was hoping for a miracle." Our conversation was brief, but it was clear that Ethan's journey was taking a different path, one filled with its own challenges and lessons. As I walked away, I realized that while our lives had diverged, I hoped he would find his way, just as I had found mine. Life has a way of coming full circle, and in the months that followed, this adage proved true. My clinic flourished, becoming a beacon for those seeking not just beauty treatments, but also a sense of community and empowerment. I had found my stride, balancing the demands of my business with the fulfillment of personal growth. Then came an unexpected turn. One busy afternoon, as I was consulting with a client, my phone rang persistently. Excusing myself, I stepped out to answer, finding Lisa, my cousin and the owner of the apartment I once shared with Ethan, on the other line. "Anna, there's trouble." Lisa's voice was tense. "Ethan and his mother are facing eviction. They haven't paid rent in months, and now they're asking for my help." The news was a shock, but not entirely surprising. Ethan's financial recklessness had been a growing concern, one that I had distanced myself from. Lisa's request was clear. She needed my help to sort this out, to confront Ethan and his mother about their obligations. I agreed to meet with them, not out of obligation to Ethan, but to support Lisa, who had always been a pillar in my life. The meeting was set in the very apartment I had left behind. Walking in, I was struck by how much it had changed. The once orderly and stylish space was cluttered, the air heavy with the tension of broken promises and unmet responsibilities. Ethan and Mrs. Harper were there, their expressions a mix of embarrassment and defiance. Lisa, ever the picture of composure, led the discussion. "Ethan, you know the terms of the lease. You've fallen behind, and this can't continue. I'm sorry, but you need to vacate the apartment," she said firmly. Ethan's response was a mix of excuses and pleas for leniency, a far cry from the confident man he once portrayed. Mrs. Harper, too, chimed in, her tone desperate. "Anna, please, you have to help us," she pleaded, turning to me. "You were part of this family, too." But I was no longer the person they once knew. "I'm sorry, but my helping is not an option. You both need to take responsibility for your actions." The meeting ended with a clear understanding that they had to leave the apartment. As I left, I felt a sense of closure, not just for myself, but for a chapter that had long needed ending. It was a poignant reminder of how our choices shape our destinies, and how, in the end, we are all accountable for the paths we choose. As the leaves began to turn, signaling the arrival of autumn, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. The challenges, the heartaches, and the triumphs had all woven into the fabric of my life, each thread a vital part of who I had become. The clinic was bustling with activity, a vibrant hub that mirrored my own personal growth. I had expanded my team, bringing in talented individuals who shared my vision of empowering others through self-care. My clients weren't just customers, they were part of a community we were building together. One crisp morning, as I sipped my coffee, I opened a letter from Ethan. It was brief, a simple acknowledgement of our divorce being finalized. The words were formal, but in them I sensed a tone of regret, perhaps even a hint of gratitude. I set the letter aside, feeling a sense of peace. Our chapter had ended, but our stories continued, each on our own path. In the solitude of my apartment, now a cozy sanctuary that reflected my tastes and ambitions, I contemplated the lessons I had learned. I had discovered an inner strength I never knew I possessed, a resilience that had carried me through the storm. I had learned the importance of boundaries, of speaking up for oneself, and of the courage it takes to walk away from situations that no longer serve us. My thoughts turned to Ethan and Mrs. Harper. Despite the pain they had caused, I harbored no ill will. I wished them well on their journey, hoping they would find their own lessons in the choices they had made. Looking ahead, I felt a surge of excitement for the future. My dreams for the clinic were evolving, with plans to collaborate with local charities and expand our wellness programs. Personally, I was open to new experiences, to the possibilities of love and companionship, but on my terms, with the wisdom gained from my past. As I closed the door to my apartment, stepping out into the brisk morning air, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life, with all its unpredictability, was a beautiful, ever-changing tapestry. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, to weave new dreams and adventures into the story of Anna Mitchell. The air was thick with the somber silence of a funeral as I stood beside my father's casket, my eyes brimming with tears. The finality of his passing weighed heavily on my heart, leaving an emptiness I knew would never fully heal. Just as I began to find solace in the embrace of my brother Ellis, a jarring voice cut through the stillness. "In our family, we take care of our own," Marla declared with a sly smile, completely disregarding the grief etched on my face. Her intrusion into this sacred moment only amplified the discomfort I had long felt about her relationship with my father. Marla, my father's longtime companion but never legally his wife, had made her presence known once again, this time with a shocking announcement. "I plan to take over the family home, to keep us all together," she said, her eyes narrowing as they met mine. I felt a surge of anger, my fists clenching at my sides. This was our home, the one I had grown up in, the one that held so many memories of my father. How dare Marla waltz in and claim it as her own, as if she had any right to do so? "That's ridiculous," Ellis interjected, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "Dad's will clearly states that the house and his assets are to be divided between us, his children." Marla's gaze remained fixed on me, her lips curling into a thin smile. "Oh, but your father and I had an understanding. He wanted me to be taken care of, to keep the family together. Surely you both can see the wisdom in that." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words caught in my throat. My father had always been a gentle soul, easily swayed by Marla's persuasive nature. Had he truly signed over his home to her, leaving Ellis and me with nothing? Panic began to set in as I contemplated the implications of Marla's claim. This was my childhood home, a sanctuary that had nurtured me through the good and the bad. The thought of losing it, of having Marla's presence loom over me constantly, filled me with a sense of dread. Ellis placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, his expression mirroring the determination I felt welling up inside me. "We'll fight this, Tegan. We won't let her take what's rightfully ours." I nodded, my resolve hardening. Marla may have manipulated my father, but she had underestimated the strength of our bond as siblings. Together, we would not let her win without a fight. As the funeral guests began to disperse, Marla approached me, her voice dripping with false concern. "My dear, I know this is a difficult time, but I assure you, I only want what's best for our family. You'll see, in the end, this is the right decision." Her words only served to fuel my growing resentment. This woman, who had always been an outsider in our lives, now had the audacity to claim our home and our family as her own. I refused to let her take away the last piece of my father that I had left. "This is not your family, Marla," I spat, my voice trembling with emotion. "You may have had my father's ear, but you will never have his children's loyalty. We won't let you take what's ours without a fight." Marla's eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of something darker beneath her facade. But as quickly as it had appeared, it vanished, replaced by a thin, patronizing smile. "We'll see about that, my dear," she said, turning on her heel and striding away, leaving me and Ellis to confront the looming battle that lay ahead. As I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the legal documents Marla had presented, a sinking feeling weighed heavily in the pit of my stomach. The words on the pages blurred together as tears threatened to spill from my eyes. My father's signature, scrawled in a shaky hand, seemed to mock me, a silent testament to Marla's manipulation. Ellis, his face etched with a mixture of disbelief and anger, slammed his fist on the table, causing me to jump. "I can't believe he signed this over to her. This is our home, our inheritance." I reached across the table, squeezing his hand in a silent plea for calm. "We have to find a way to challenge this, Ellis. Marla can't just waltz in and claim everything after Dad's death." My brother's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Oh, she thinks she can, Tegan, but I'll be damned if I let her get away with it." I nodded, determination stealing my resolve. Marla had been a constant presence in our lives, slowly worming her way into my father's affections. But I had always sensed something off about her. Now, with these documents in front of us, her true colors were starting to show. "We need to dig deeper, find out what else she's been hiding." I paused, chewing on my bottom lip as a thought occurred to me. Maybe we should reach out to Finn. He's a lawyer, and he still has connections in the community. Ellis raised a brow, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Finn? Huh? Didn't you two have a falling out a couple of years ago?" I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, the memories of my broken relationship with Finn still as fresh as the day it ended. "That was a long time ago, Ellis. I'm sure he'd be willing to help for old time's sake." My brother's expression softened, and he gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Okay, let's give him a call. If anyone can help us take down Marla's ridiculous claims, it's Finn." As I dialed Finn's number, my heart raced. It had been years since we'd spoken, and the thought of facing him again filled me with a mixture of trepidation and longing. When his familiar voice answered, I took a deep breath and launched into an explanation of the situation, pleading for his assistance. To my relief, Finn's response was immediate. "Of course, Tegan. I'll do whatever I can to help. Just tell me what you need." Over the next few days, Finn dove headfirst into unraveling the web of deceit Marla had woven. He uncovered a trail of past marriages, each one ending under mysterious circumstances. It became clear that Marla's sole motive was to gain control of our family's assets, even if it meant manipulating my father and tearing our family apart. As Finn presented his findings, Ellis and I listened in stunned silence. The woman we had welcomed into our lives, the one who had claimed to care for our father, was nothing more than a cold-hearted schemer. "Marla has a son, Jared, who's been estranged from her for years," Finn revealed, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I think he might be able to provide some valuable insight into her past and her motivations." I exchanged a glance with Ellis, both of us realizing that the battle against Marla was only just beginning. With Finn's help, we would uncover the truth and reclaim what was rightfully ours, no matter the cost. As we left Finn's office, a newfound determination burned within me. Marla had underestimated the strength of our family's bond, and I vowed to do whatever it took to protect our legacy and our home. As Finn delved deeper into Marla's past, the web of deceit he uncovered only grew more tangled and disturbing. With Ellis by my side, we listened intently as the details unfolded, each revelation fueling our determination to take down this woman who had wormed her way into our lives. "Marla has been married 3 times before," Finn said, his brow furrowed in concentration. Each marriage ended under mysterious circumstances, with substantial assets and inheritances passing into her possession. I felt a chill run down my spine. Marla had always seemed so charming and maternal, but the truth was far more sinister. "So she's done this before, manipulating men for their money and then cutting them out of the picture?" Finn nodded grimly. "It appears so. And the patterns are strikingly similar to what she's trying to do with your father's estate. Ellis clenched his fist, his knuckles turning white. The bitch, he growled. I can't believe we let her get this far. We should have seen through her act sooner. I reached out and placed a hand on my brother's arm, hoping to calm his rising temper. We can't change the past, Ellis, but we can make sure she doesn't succeed this time. Finn leaned forward, his eyes burning with determination. That's where I come in. With the evidence I've gathered, we can challenge Marla's claims to the house and your father's assets. But we'll need to act quickly before she can solidify her hold on the situation. As we discussed the next steps, a familiar face suddenly appeared in the doorway. Jared, Marla's estranged son, stood there, his expression a mix of apprehension and anger. I heard about what's happening with my mother, he said, his voice low and gruff. I want to help stop her. Ellis and I exchanged a surprised glance. Marla had never mentioned having a son, let alone one that was estranged from her. Finn, however, seemed unsurprised by Jared's arrival. We were hoping you might show up, Finn said, motioning for Jared to join us. Your insight into your mother's past could be invaluable in our fight against her. Jared took a seat, his gaze fixed on the documents strewn across the table. She's done this before, you know, he said, his voice heavy with bitterness. Manipulating people, using them for her own gain. I should have known she'd try something like this with your father. As Jared shared his own harrowing experiences with Marla's deceit, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. We learned of the countless lives she had destroyed, the families she had torn apart, all in her relentless pursuit of wealth and power. She's ruthless, Jared said, his eyes darkening with a mixture of anger and shame. I should have warned your father, but I was too afraid of what she might do. I reached out and squeezed his hand, hoping to convey a sense of understanding. It's not your fault, Jared. Marla's the one to blame here. But now we have a chance to stop her, to make sure she doesn't hurt anyone else. Finn nodded, his expression grim. With Jared's help and the evidence we've gathered, I think we have a strong case to challenge Marla's claims, but we need to move quickly before she can solidify her hold on your father's estate. As we left Finn's office, a newfound sense of purpose and determination filled me. Marla may have thought she had the upper hand, but she had underestimated the power of our united front. Together we would expose her true nature and ensure that she faced the consequences of her actions. As Finn continued to build our case against Marla, I knew we needed to move quickly if we had any chance of reclaiming my father's home and assets. With Jared's help, we had uncovered a wealth of information about Marla's past, but there was still so much more to uncover. We need to keep the pressure on, Finn said, his brow furrowed in concentration. Marla's not going to give up easily, and she's got deep pockets to fight this thing out in court. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications of our impending legal battle. What can we do to gain the upper hand? Finn paused for a moment, then leaned forward, a glint of determination in his eyes. I think it's time we brought in another ally, someone with a personal connection to you and the case. I felt a knot form in the pit of my stomach. You don't mean? Tegan, I think we need to reach out to your ex-boyfriend, Finn, Finn said, his voice low and serious. I opened my mouth to protest, but Finn held up a hand, silencing me. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but Finn has the legal expertise and community connections that could be invaluable in taking down Marla. Ellis, who had been silent throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. Tegan, I know it's not ideal, but Finn's right. If anyone can help us beat Marla at her own game, it's him. I sighed, running a hand through my hair in frustration. The thought of reaching out to Finn, the man I had once loved, filled me with a mix of emotions. Apprehension, longing, and a tinge of regret. All right, I conceded, steeling my resolve, but I want to be the one to call him. I need to know that he's on board with this, and that he's willing to put aside our history for the sake of taking down Marla. Finn nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. I understand. Just let me know what he says. As I dialed Finn's number, my heart pounded in my chest. It had been years since we'd spoken, and I couldn't help but wonder how he would react to my call. When he answered, his voice instantly sent a familiar warmth through me. Tegan? Is everything okay? I took a deep breath, diving straight into the details of our situation. "Finn, I need your help. Marla is trying to take over my father's home and assets, and we need someone with your legal expertise to help us fight her." There was a brief pause, and I held my breath, bracing for his refusal, but to my surprise his response was immediate and unwavering. "Of course, Tegan. Whatever you need, I'm here to help." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, and a small smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. "Thank you, Finn. I really appreciate this." As we discussed the next steps, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. With Finn on our side, we stood a better chance of taking down Marla's nefarious plans. And perhaps, in the process, we might even find a way to heal the wounds of our past. As I hung up the phone, I caught Ellis's approving nod. "See? I told you he'd be willing to help." I couldn't help but chuckle, feeling a newfound sense of determination. Yeah, don't rub it in. Let's just focus on taking Marla down once and for all." With Finn's expertise and Jared's insider knowledge, I knew we were one step closer to exposing Marla's true nature and reclaiming what rightfully belonged to her. The battle may have just begun, but I was more ready than ever to face it head-on. As Finn continued to build our case against Marla, it became clear that she was growing increasingly desperate to maintain her grip on my father's estate. The more evidence we uncovered, the more vicious her tactics became. "She's been spreading lies about you and Ellis in the community," Finn revealed, his expression one of disgust. "She's trying to turn everyone against you, to isolate you, and make her claims seem more legitimate." I felt a surge of anger, my hands clenching into fists. How dare she? This is our home, our family's legacy, and she's trying to take it all away. Ellis, his face flushed with rage, slammed his fist on the table. "I won't let her get away with this. We've got to expose her for the conniving snake she is." Finn nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I agree, but we need to be strategic. Marla's got deep pockets and powerful connections in this community. If we make a wrong move, she could bury us in legal battles for years." I chewed on my bottom lip, my mind racing with the implications of Finn's words. Marla had already caused so much damage, not just to our family, but to countless others. The thought of her escaping justice filled me with a sense of dread. "There has to be a way to bring her down, once and for all," I said, determination stealing my voice. "We can't let her win, not after everything she's done." Finn's eyes narrowed, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "I think I might have an idea," he said, leaning forward. "But it's going to require all of us working together to pull it off." As Finn laid out his plan, I felt a spark of hope ignite within me. It was a bold move, one that would put Marla's deceit on full display for the entire community to see. Ellis and I exchanged a long, contemplative look, silently weighing the risks and rewards. "I'm in," Ellis said, his voice laced with determination. "If there's a chance we can take that conniving bitch down, I'm all for it." I nodded, my own resolve hardening. "Let's do it. It's time Marla faced the consequences of her actions." Over the next few days, we put Finn's plan into motion, carefully coordinating with Jared to ensure everything fell into place. Marla, unaware of the impending storm, continued her campaign of misinformation, fueling the growing rift between us and the community. But as the community event we had chosen as the stage for our confrontation drew near, I could feel the tension mounting. Marla, sensing that her control was slipping, became increasingly erratic and aggressive, lashing out at us with vicious insults and threats. "You think you can just waltz in and take what's mine?" she hissed, her eyes burning with a fury I had never seen before. "This house, this family, they belong to me, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep them." I stood firm, meeting her gaze without flinching. "This is not your family, Marla. It never was, and we're going to prove it, once and for all." As the event began, the air was thick with anticipation. Finn, Ellis, and Jared were in position, ready to expose Marla's web of lies. And when the moment came, when Marla's facade finally crumbled under the weight of our evidence, the community erupted in a chorus of gasps and outraged cries. Marla, her eyes wild with desperation, tried to flee, but Finn and Ellis were there to block her path. "It's over, Marla," Finn said, his voice laced with triumph. "Your reign of manipulation and deceit ends here." As Marla was led away by the authorities, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle had been won, and our family's legacy had been reclaimed. But the true victory lay in the knowledge that Marla's reckoning was finally at hand. The air was charged with a palpable tension as Finn, Ellis, and I took the stage at the community event. Marla stood before us, her eyes narrowed with a mix of fury and desperation. I could practically feel the weight of her deception pressing down on us, daring us to expose the truth. "Everyone, please, listen to me," Marla pleaded, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Tegan and Ellis are trying to steal what rightfully belongs to our family. I only want to keep us together, to honor the wishes of my beloved partner." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into the palms of my hands. The nerve of her to stand there and spin her web of lies, even in the face of the evidence we had gathered. Finn stepped forward, his expression stern and unwavering. "That's where you're wrong, Marla. The truth is, you've been manipulating this family for years, isolating your partner from his own children, and using his assets for your own gain." A hush fell over the crowd as Finn began to rattle off the details of Marla's past. The multiple marriages, the suspicious circumstances surrounding their endings, and the pattern of her exploiting her partner's wealth. Marla's face contorted with a rage I had never seen before. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she spat, her eyes darting frantically around the room. "This is all lies, fabricated by these ungrateful children." Ellis stepped up, his voice steady and unyielding. "The only liar here is you, Marla. We have the documents, the evidence, to prove that you've been manipulating our father and us for your own selfish gain." Jared, who had been silent up until this point, finally spoke up, his voice thick with emotion. "She's done this before, you know. Destroyed families, ruined lives, all for the sake of her own greed and power." The crowd murmured in disbelief, their eyes shifting between Marla and the three of us. I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the scales finally tipping in our favor. Marla's composure began to crumble, her mask of false concern slipping away to reveal the true, twisted nature beneath. "You'll all regret this," she shrieked, her eyes wild with desperation. "I'll make sure you pay for this, every last one of you." Finn raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "That's not going to happen, Marla. We've filed the necessary legal actions to strip you of any claims to the family's assets and home. Your reign of manipulation and deceit ends here." As the authorities arrived to take Marla away, the air seemed to ripple with a palpable sense of relief and triumph. Ellis and I stood side by side, our shoulders squared, a small but victorious smile playing on our lips. The community members who had once been swayed by Marla's lies now looked upon us with newfound respect and admiration. They had seen the truth, the ugly reality of Marla's machinations, and they rallied behind us, offering their support and condolences. In that moment, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle was won, and our family's legacy had been reclaimed. Marla's downfall had been swift and decisive, a testament to the power of truth and the strength of our united front. As we left the event, Jared approached us, a tentative smile on his face. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft but sincere, "for exposing her, for giving me a chance to make things right. I'm sorry I couldn't do it sooner." I reached out and squeezed his hand, my own eyes brimming with unshed tears. "You're part of our family now, Jared. We're in this together." As we walked away, Ellis draped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "It's over, Teague. We did it." I nodded, my heart swelling with a mix of relief and pride. The journey had been arduous, but in the end, we had emerged victorious, our family's legacy and our home secure. It was a bittersweet triumph, but one that filled me with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. As the dust settled after our public confrontation with Marla, the full weight of her downfall began to sink in. Watching her facade crumble, her desperate attempts to cling to power and control, was both satisfying and sobering. Finn wasted no time in initiating the necessary legal actions to strip Marla of any claims to our family's assets and home. The evidence we had gathered, bolstered by Jared's first-hand accounts, proved to be a devastating blow to Marla's case. "She's done," Finn declared, a triumphant glint in his eyes. "The judge has ordered the immediate transfer of the house and your father's estate back to you and Ellis." Ellis let out a breath I didn't realize he had been holding, his shoulders slumping with relief. "Finally, some good news. I was starting to think this whole thing would never end. I nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. It's over, Ellis. We can finally start to rebuild, to move on with our lives. But as we celebrated our victory, a sense of unease began to creep in. Marla, once so confident and in control, had been reduced to a cornered animal, lashing out with desperation. "This isn't over," she hissed, her eyes burning with a twisted rage. "You think you've won, but I'll make sure you pay for this. All of you." Finn stepped forward, his expression unwavering. "Save it, Marla. Your threats hold no power anymore. You're going to jail for your past crimes, and you'll never be able to hurt this family again." Marla's lips curled into a snarl, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the true darkness that had been lurking beneath her veneer all along. "You have no idea what I'm capable of," she spat. "I'll make sure you all suffer, just like I have." As the authorities led her away, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. Marla's words, laced with a chilling certainty, sent a wave of unease through me. Had we truly seen the last of her twisted machinations? In the days that followed, the community rallied around us, offering support and condolences. They had witnessed Marla's true nature firsthand, and many expressed shame and guilt for having believed her lies. "We should have seen through her act sooner," one of my colleagues said, her eyes downcast. "I'm so sorry, Tegan, for not trusting you." I reached out and squeezed her hand, offering a reassuring smile. "It's not your fault. Marla was a master of deception. She fooled all of us for a long time." As we began the process of reclaiming our family's home and rebuilding our lives, a sense of cautious optimism began to take root. Finn, Ellis, and I worked tirelessly to create a community arts program in our father's memory, channeling our energy into something positive and meaningful. But just as we were starting to find our footing, a sudden and shocking development sent shockwaves through our community. Marla, in a final, desperate act of vengeance, had been arrested for the fraudulent activities uncovered in her previous marriages. The news hit us like a punch to the gut, a stark reminder that Marla's reach had extended far beyond our little town. Ellis and I exchanged a worried glance, our triumphant smiles fading. "We should have known she wouldn't go down without a fight," Ellis murmured, his brow furrowed in concern. I nodded, my mind racing with the implications. "We can't let our guard down, not now. Marla's still out there, and she's proven she'll stop at nothing to get what she wants." As we grappled with this new development, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Marla's downfall had been swift and decisive, but the scars she had left on our family would take time to heal. And with the knowledge of her past crimes now laid bare, I couldn't help but wonder what other surprises she might have in store for us. In the aftermath of Marla's downfall, Ellis and I found ourselves at a crossroads, both physically and emotionally. The family home we had fought so hard to reclaim now stood before us, a bittersweet reminder of the tumultuous journey we had just endured. As I stepped through the familiar threshold, memories of my childhood flooded my mind. Laughter-filled family dinners, cozy nights spent reading by the fireplace, and the warm embrace of my father's love. But now, those cherished moments felt tainted, overshadowed by the darkness that Marla had cast over our lives. Ellis reached out and squeezed my shoulder, his expression solemn. "I know it's not going to be easy, Teague, but we've got to start somewhere." I nodded, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "You're right, this is our home, our family's legacy. We can't let Marla's poison destroy that." Together, we began the daunting task of reclaiming our space, removing any trace of Marla's influence. It was as if we were erasing the very existence of the woman who had threatened to tear our family apart. As we worked, Finn joined us, a small but determined smile on his face. "I'm here to help, in any way I can," he said, his eyes meeting mine with a warmth that I hadn't felt in years. The three of us, united in our mission, set about restoring the home to its former glory. Slowly but surely, the familiar sights and sounds began to resurface, and with them, a sense of comfort and belonging that had been so cruelly ripped away. "It's going to take time," Finn said, his gaze sweeping across the room, "but we'll get there. This place will be a home again, I promise." I reached out, grasping Finn's hand in a silent gesture of gratitude. The walls that had once stood between us seemed to crumble, and in that moment I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. As the weeks turned into months, Ellis and I poured our hearts and souls into creating a community arts program in our father's memory. It was our way of honoring his legacy, of turning the darkness that Marla had brought into something beautiful and meaningful. Jared, the once estranged son of our former adversary, became an unexpected ally and a part of our extended family. His insights and personal experiences proved invaluable as we navigated the complex emotional terrain, and his commitment to the arts program was a testament to his own redemption. "I'm grateful for this," he said one day, his eyes shining with a newfound sense of purpose, "for the chance to be a part of something that's making a real difference in people's lives." I reached out and squeezed his hand, a warm smile spreading across my face. "You're family now, Jared. We're in this together." As the community rallied around our initiative, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. The scars left by Marla's deceit would take time to heal, but in the act of rebuilding, we were forging something stronger, something that couldn't be torn apart by the machinations of a single twisted individual. Finn, ever the steady presence in my life, became a constant source of support and guidance. The walls between us had crumbled, and in their place, a renewed sense of trust and affection blossomed. It was a gentle, yet powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, love could still find a way to flourish. As I stood in the newly restored family home, surrounded by the people I loved, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Marla's reign of terror was over, and in its wake, a new chapter had begun, one filled with hope, resilience, and the unwavering strength of our family bond.